Build Show friends, I gotta tell you, I am feeling lucky to be alive today. I put out on social media that my family was involved in a tornado last weekend, over Memorial Day weekend, and I got a ton of messages on Instagram. I got texts, calls, everything from a ton of you reaching out to make sure my family's safe. And number one, my family's totally safe. Nobody left with a scratch because of it. But I thought I'd relay the story a little bit because I think there's actually some interesting perspectives from a builder's point of view, having survived a crazy event like that. And also there's probably a little bit of knowledge in case you have a future accident like this that you might use at that scene. Here's the story. My family went up about 4 hours north of where I live in Austin, Texas, outside of Dallas, where some good friends of ours bought a lake house a couple years ago. And so there's 3 families that gathered just to hang out for the weekend at their lake house. Friday night, the night that we got there, a storm blew in, some thunder and lightning, some rain, no big deal. It's about 10:45 at night. Our kids are all still up. We've got kids all ages. And all of a sudden, this 2-story area where we're sitting that has windows kind of facing the lake, some big tall glass, the windows just started leaking profusely. I wish I would have pulled out my camera at that point. I didn't. The windows are just leaking like mad. And I'm telling my friends and saying, oh, it's a kind of log construction. It's okay. Where those are leaking, there's not going to be water in the cavities. And it wasn't really leaking onto any drywall at this point. And this goes on for a couple minutes, and suddenly my son comes out of the basement and says, "Dad, it's leaking real bad in the basement." So I run down to the basement thinking that I might, I don't know what, help or, or push water out or something. And again, at this point, it's still just a thunderstorm. There was no warning, nothing. Our phones were not alerting. And all of a sudden, these spiral stairs that go from the first floor to downstairs, my wife, all the kids, all the wives, everybody comes streaming down. Oh my gosh, the roof, Dad, the roof.
Oh my gosh, dude.
Friday night, midnight, we got either a tornado or just a massive windstorm, and we're at our friend's lake house here in North Dallas. The overhang got uplifted with wind right there. You can see those logs go out and rip the roof off. And my wife said, it's like it's snowing up there. The drywall was basically splitting apart and was raining down what looked like snow. And my wife turns to me and goes, I can see the sky. And, you know, I'm a little bit in shock at this point. Like, what do you mean you could see the sky upstairs? So we all jump into a basement closet. There's, I don't know how many of us, a dozen people or so. There's certainly no social distancing. Life safety comes way before that. My wife goes, "Pray for us." So I said a prayer and said, "God, I don't know what's going on upstairs, but please keep us safe." Thank you, God. It has a concrete floor, and so we went downstairs for kind of a storm shelter. Nobody got hurt. Everybody's safe. The house is going to need a lot of work, but houses are fixable and people are not. Our ears are popping. We're also hearing this noise upstairs. Whoever built this house, I originally thought it was an older house. It was built in the 80s. It did have a basement. It's kind of dug into a hillside. So we're in this concrete basement. The stones from the fireplace, it was an Oklahoma stone, these big stones raining down from the fireplace because when the roof blew off, it kind of stripped the chimney as well. And all the fireplace stones fell into the living room, right onto the couch where my son was sitting 5 minutes before. Crashing down onto the furniture. Probably 15 minutes later, all the noise kind of stops. It was still raining, but there's no more wind. And a couple of the dads go upstairs. Sure enough, you can see the sky. The roof basically peeled off. Now it had a giant overhang on the porch. I don't know, 10, 12 foot overhang. If you look up from the ground, you'd see these sticks sticking out with no roof on them anymore. But it had a giant porch, and I'm sure that's why those windows never leaked in the past, because it had a 12-foot overhang on that location. In hindsight, I'm not actually sure it was a tornado. There was some snapped trees, the roof totally blew off. It could have been a straight line wind, hard to know for sure. But either way, the roof peeled off from the porch, peeled off about, 6 or 8 feet of the roof where we were sitting over this kind of 2-story family room section. And sure enough, you could see the sky. I took some video with my phone that night. You could see the lightning flashing in the sky as the lightning flashes just showing right through where the roof was only moments before. Now we were gonna spend the night in an upstairs bedroom, and it looked like a piece of roof plywood had gone back down through that area, because the roof was still intact, but there was a giant break in the drywall and water was dripping down into the bed. Here's where I would have been sleeping had we been in bed already. Had this happen an hour or two later, that's where I would have been sleeping. And could have easily killed us had we been there when it hit. We didn't know what to do. It's 11:30 at this point. The house is a wreck. It's flooded. We knocked on the neighbor's door, who, oddly enough, only a son was home at that time. I slept on the neighbor's dining room floor with a blanket over me and a blanket underneath me. And the next morning we got up at daybreak, tried to figure out a plan. What do we do? Well, that was pretty crazy. We have a sunroof in the family room here. Now here's the part that I think is interesting. In hindsight, I didn't think of this at that time. If you look through the debris, the 2x6 roof rafters that were in the lawn, for instance, or the plywood, I didn't see any metal parts whatsoever. I don't think there was any hold downs. I'm in my real rebuild, and if you look up above me here, that's a Simpson hurricane strap, they're known as. That's a strap that basically holds the roof rafters down to the top plate, and then that continuity is brought all the way down to the foundation, which helps keep that roof on in a huge uplift event. And then if you watch my other videos on this with my engineer, we actually doubled the amount of hold down power, because I use those hold downs and I use some SPAX power lags, and we drilled those things up through the bottom of the double top plate and into the rafters on my house. So I actually doubled up my hold down strength. I can tell you now that certainly doesn't seem silly after living through this tornado or straight line wind. I don't know which it was, because I didn't see any of that at this house. And if you saw the footage, my Suburban got pretty damaged, blew out my back window. I had to drive back to Austin the next day without a back window. The other thing that I realized the next day was, we got a lot of drywall wet in the house. The roof is actually fairly fixable though. I think it's gonna be a straightforward project to kind of rebuild the house, especially because it had a concrete deck. What a blessing that was. But I wanted to make sure that if we had any wet walls, that we could strip that. And so I gathered my buddies and said, all right, let's do this. Now we didn't have very many tools. My friend who owns the house is not a builder for a living. So I made a Walmart run. All right, y'all, headed into town. There's a Walmart in town not far from our friend's lake house. I'm gonna go grab some fans, some tools, maybe a tarp. Walmart for the win. I decided to go with 4 fans, 4 pry bars, and this will help me get a clean cut. And this is just because I was at Walmart and needed some things. $17.88 though, that is really hard to beat. Well done, Walmart. Generally speaking, you have 72 hours before there's going to be any fungal growth or any kind of rot that sets in. So if you can strip all those moisture sensitive materials and get it back down to wood, pull all the insulation out. Drywall and insulation are cheap to replace, right? Pull those, throw that away, dry those cavities out, whether this is a flood or any other type of event. And then you're going to be in really good shape to rebuild those areas. All the building materials are going to be dry. And it's going to be a pretty simple process to rebuild. All right, y'all, cleanup's going well. Look at this crew over here. Man, these guys are rocking it. I'm getting the debris up. We're leaving furniture in place for the adjuster, so good progress. The kids have been super helpful. In the end, my family, all the families came away without any scratches. I was so thankful that God spared us. I don't know why he doesn't always spare people from these natural disasters, but I was thankful that he did spare us. And I'm thankful to you guys for all your support. As I said earlier, so many of you reached out to me and said, do you need anything? I live in Dallas, can I come help? What an incredible community I've got here on YouTube, and so many friends that I've made out there through these crazy videos that a nerdy builder in Texas makes on a weekly basis. It's gonna be a pretty straightforward rebuild. That's not always the case. With natural disasters, I know a lot of you have been through those. My friends in Houston that survived the hurricane a couple years, it took a long time for a lot of them to rebuild. So I'm thankful that wasn't the case. But after having lived through it myself, I can tell you that I am really interested in building extremely durable houses. And going above and beyond what code calls for, whether that's for shear wall strength, using real shear wall and not thermoply, or some of those other cardboard type products, going above and beyond when it comes to hardware and hold down strength. This is things that really do make a difference when things get crazy outside of your house. Guys, thanks for all your support. If you're not currently a Build Show subscriber, I'd love to have you join me and the crew here. We publish every Tuesday and every Friday. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram, otherwise we'll see you next time on the Build Show.